Wedding dresses. I'm here to tell you that I made my wedding dress for $75, and I'm not joking. I'm actually overguessing. Now, personally, I feel that the total boss move is for you to make your own wedding dress. Hello, fellow nerds. This is Sean. I am a nerd that knits, and this is how I made my wedding dress for $75, and so can you. I was a woman with a vision, and like any modern day woman, I had a vision board, a Pinterest account, and you cannot tell me that if you got married, you don't have one of these. I swear, it's like the best resource ever. My wedding was in Vegas in June, and if you know anything about Vegas June weather, the weather is hot. I wanted short, sexy, and fun. But what material is best in hot weather? I always think of cotton or linen. Now, linen doesn't really stretch, but it does drape very nicely. It's not the best material for lace unless it's blended with silk. A linen silk blend would be gorgeous. Perhaps if I knitted another wedding dress, I would then buy this blend. So the yarn that I used was the Ultra Prima cotton yarn from Cascade Yarn, 8 balls. Right now, the cheapest I found in 2025 is $6.75. Now, I bought this yarn in 2016, and I know the yarn was about $50. I feel that most women in the past made their own wedding dresses or had their wedding dresses made by a family member, especially if you're from a less affluent family. But we're talking about back in the day when people would wear their finest clothing, their Sunday best. As a wedding guest, this is also something that they would wear, but RESPECT to the couple, of course. Some people would borrow finer clothing from other people, like in the case of my grandfather. He borrowed a suit in order to propose to my grandmother. Super cute story, by the way. He came back from the war, World War II, and he borrowed a suit from his cousin, I believe. There is a picture of him on that day. It looks like he stepped out of a classic 1950s movie. He looked dapper in his borrowed suit. It is actually a cherished picture that my grandma had. We never really had the concept of a white wedding dress until Queen Victoria. I talked about Queen Victoria in a previous video, so if you're curious about that, please look back to that. She started the whole white wedding dress, but technically many royal members over the years wore white, way before Queen Victoria did. The white wedding dress trend just stuck after her. So that's why she's been given credit, and sometimes trends stay with certain people even if they weren't the first ones to do it. Certain celebrities of the day have better press than others. But where did the virgin white claims come from? White does not equal being a virgin. It actually equals wealth. Most royalty had the wealth to have a new dress made for them for such a big event such as a wedding. And remember, these royals were mainly married off due to building and forging alliances with other nations or other royalty or just other higher nobles. Thus, the expense was rationalized based off of all these reasons. But Jean, what does this have to do with your $75 wedding dress? Well, it's all about economy. I'm trying to explain that 1, you don't need an expensive wedding dress, and 2, it doesn't need to be white. So without further ado, this is the story of how I made my $75 wedding dress and how it is just as good as any other regular wedding dress. So obviously one day I didn't just wake up and go, oh my gosh, I should knit my wedding dress. I started looking at wedding dresses for hot weather. I searched online, but everything was polyester. Polyester equals sweat. While I was looking, I was of course buying yarn for my mini projects, and during a conversation with a yarn shop owner, she had a knitted dress on a mannequin in her shop. I thought that this knitted dress was impressive, and even though I'd only been knitting for 14 years, I thought it was a beautiful goal. I was worried and figured that it was so hard to achieve, but this would be a future goal. This dress was like, oh, it's beautiful, but I'm just not there yet. So the shop owner, she was getting married and she was also looking at dresses, but she was a few years out. And of course, we were talking all things wedding. She said that she probably was just going to knit her next wedding dress. During this time on Ravelry back in 2017, there was a shockingly little amount of knitted wedding dress patterns. There were a lot of crochet dresses, especially crochet lace dresses, but I am definitely a knitter. I just love lace. And I also know that my knitting skills are better versus my crocheting skills. The patterns available were very minimal, especially when it came to knitting. But I do love a classic red lip, white dress, a bird cage, and this dress was the complete package. And the pattern was $6. I repeat, the pattern was $6. Guys, a Vogue sewing pattern is at least $20, perhaps cheaper if you price hunt. So I had a how hard can it be kind of moment, and I figured why not? All the while knowing I could always order a dress online if I effed it up. You know, Murphy's Law. I am a scientist at the end of the day. But I was in a new land of Delulu and I was singing like an extra in The Wizard of Oz. Why would I use this particular musical as an example? Well, mainly because you have to trust the process. This was a Vogue pattern, y'all. It was from a trusted source. But just because you have a great pattern, it doesn't mean that you will be successful. Either way, I dived head first into this murky pool. My wedding dress. So we're gonna go over just a few details. Pretty cute, pretty quaint, pretty dainty, but you will need to know about them, especially if you do plan on making this pattern. And so let's go over it with my wedding dress on my mannequin. It's going to be the scallop edging. So if you're not a crocheter, just know that this is a cute little detail. I put it right here. I am dismayed that I did not put it on the bottom hem of my skirt. So I think if I did this pattern again, I would definitely do that. Maybe that's something that you're interested in. It does kind of bring the continuity of the scalloped crocheted edge to the bottom, and I think that that would definitely help. There is kind of a scalloped edge on the bottom, but it's more of a knitting scallop versus this crocheted scallop that I think is very cute. Another thing you could do with this bodice that I didn't do is you could bead the entirety of it. This would just be beautiful, just entirely beaded. So that's another thing that you could think about if that's something that you're interested in doing. The belt here, this belt right here. What I like about this pattern in particular is it goes from open lace knitting and kind of a busy open lace knitting-ish. Not as open as this one, but you know, you definitely see a lot of the gaps. And here's this solid piece to kind of meld the two together because it is kind of a busy pattern. So this belt, you would think that you would knit it this way, and actually you knit it this way. So it actually kind of helps with that continuity because it's kind of against the grain to speak. It just really does tie the entire look together because you have open, very closed, and then open again. It really does help separate those lacy bits. And so I really like how this is kind of constructed in that way. So the next point I'd like to make is we're going to turn my lovely little thing around. And this would be the back. So I did open it up just so you can kind of see what we're working with here. I have 12 pearl buttons. Now I was very particular to find this particular size. I don't remember the size off the top of my head, but it's a little bit bigger. It is a little bit bigger of a pearl button. Sometimes you see those really, really tiny pearl buttons on a lot of wedding dresses, but the pearl buttons are tiny, and then they have like this a little elastic band that you have to loop on top of the buttons. Pain in the butt. And everyone was like, oh, just use a crocheting hook. So that's what people do in order to flip this loop onto a button is to use a crochet hook normally. Please be aware of the size. Please be aware of when you are crocheting this hem to make sure that these loops aren't so big or too tight. Just be aware when you're making this button band, if you are indeed making it for this dress. Look just how simple and elegant this is. Skirt fabric. So I'm just going to turn it back around. I do want to make some comments about the cotton yarn in particular. So if you want this piece to be an heirloom piece, something you pass down from generation to generation, cotton is not the best idea. It really isn't. And the thing is that cotton is supposed to be breathable. I was using it for, it's hot in Vegas, so I was using it specifically for a particular reason. There's things about cotton yarn that if you don't know, it will kind of back out over time. So if you are having this up on a hanger like this, it's not going to be pretty. I always fold this and put this in a bag and then put this in a very special place. So if you don't want to do that, definitely look at materials that aren't going to stretch out as much. I think the next time if I do make this dress, I probably will do a silk wool or a silk linen blend of yarns. So I feel that those do stand the test of time, but do know they're not super stretchy. So you might need just like a little nylon in there somewhere. So you're going to be a little choosier with your materials if you want to stand the test of time. And, you know, some of those silk dresses, they've been around for a really, really long time. It does get more expensive if you're wanting to use different yarns. Another thing is that you could dye this. So this is cotton. You can dye it whatever color you want. I would suggest that you dye the yarn before you use it, because I have made a many of things and then dyed them afterwards. And then I'm like, oh, that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. Yeah, you need to dye it before you make it. So just word of caution. I know that there are some brides that do a trash the dress or dye the dress or do all these things. And you could totally do that with these particular dresses. I feel like as a knitter, this was a big, big goal and I achieved it. And so I still want the, I still want the reminder out there that I was able to do this. Probably will not be messing with this one anytime soon. Now, there are so many people that are hand making their wedding dresses. If you're on Threads, I've seen a lot of people and their journeys, and they talk about it, and they talk about all the steps, all the missteps, things that worked, things that didn't work. So I really love that, and I really encourage that if you're making your own wedding dress, put it out there so we can all see your process. And I mean, that's partly why I'm doing this, is I made this back in 2017. It is currently 2025. These skills, I have always been able to do them in other places. Even if you think this is very daunting, this dress that I made didn't take very long for me, but that's because I'm a lace knitter and I've been doing lace for a really long time. But if you want this to be your goal, it's really not that hard. You just need to do it slowly. And you're building on a lot of skills, especially if you start here at the skirt. The skirt is just a really easy dip your toe into, and then you go to the lace bodice. And then just remember, you can always unravel. So the best part about this project is it really doesn't take that much time because you're using like a DK weight yarn. And then I believe the needles are like a 6 or 7. I think I went down because I wanted the yarn to be a little bit more open. So there are definitely ways that you can like build up to making this. I wouldn't say this is a hard pattern at all. I didn't feel like there was any mistakes in this pattern, which is really nice, and it's kind of rare. If you ask me, just the harder the pattern is, I swear there's more issues with it. And it's a very simple knit wedding dress, and you know, you can bedazzle it all you want. You can put beads on it, you can make it a prettier color, you can make it a richer material. There's so many other ways you could have fun with this pattern, and there's so many other wedding dress patterns out there now. So when I was looking at wedding dress patterns, I probably might have gone for a different dress because there are so many amazing dresses out there. There's one that you can like poof and put crinoline under, and it just looks like you're stepping out of like a 1950s wedding. So I would suggest you start this project pretty early if you're really worried. I think I started this dress pattern in March and my wedding was in June. So, I mean,
that gave me enough time. Also, you know, if you're someone who is going to, let's say that you're not going to a wedding, let's say you're doing something and you want to make this your gold dress. I've seen people actually use this as bridesmaid dresses. They just dyed it to be a different color. So there are so many ways you can use this particular dress pattern. It doesn't exactly have to be wedding. I encourage you to just step outside your little comfort zone and dip your toe into lace dressmaking. There are a couple other dress patterns that I am eyeing up, so if you are interested in this one, let me know. I will definitely keep on making some lace dresses and we can keep on talking about them. So I hope this helps you in your pattern decision making if you are looking at making your own wedding dress. And just remember, it doesn't have to be expensive. This was a cheap wedding dress. But remember, you get to choose what material you use and what you're doing with it.
So, final thoughts. Do you have to make your own wedding dress? No. But it gives you the best core memory. It gives you the best sense of achievement when you do make your own wedding dress. And I'm just here to say that it's really not that hard. Maybe the main takeaway is, why not? Like, how hard can it be? Surprisingly, it's not that hard. You just kind of have to take like a little bit of a leap of faith and just try it out. And now I have this cherished item that I didn't have before, and I made it with my own hands, and that is just something that's just, you just can't take that away from your knitting experience. And what's also great is that you can also give this to others. I mean, if there's someone else that are like, oh, I want a knitted wedding dress, you know, you can either teach them how to make their own, or you can make one for them. And I think that is so beautiful. It's just beautiful way of giving, especially on such a beautiful day. It's amazing what we'll do to push and propel you more into your knitting aspirations. If you're wondering like, oh, should I really attempt that? Go ahead, attempt it, because guess what? Once again, if it doesn't turn out, you can always unravel the yarn and use it for something else. So I hope this inspires you to, you know, make a wedding dress or make a dress, and you'd be surprised how, you know, inexpensive it is, as long as you're using like certain materials, of course. And so, happy knitting, happy crocheting, and as always, please like, comment, and subscribe.